Every installment of the Fallout series seems to include just a bit more of the unknown, leaving mysteries hidden around every corner that reflects the deepest corners of our imaginations. So today, we're exploring every supernatural mystery in Fallout 4, starting with a secret location that holds a dark and unpleasant secret. 1. The Grantchester Mystery Mansion. In the Nuka World DLC, south of the Nuka World Junkyard, you can find a curiously intact pre-war mansion that has a gruesome mystery held within. This is the Grantchester Mystery Mansion. To get in, you will have to present a ticket to the Protectron that stands outside, which isn't too hard as there are plenty on the ground behind him. The mystery begins with the story of Hannibal and Morticia Grantchester, though one could say it didn't really begin until Morticia nearly died after giving birth to their daughter, Lucy. A narrative reveals shortly after entering the mansion that Hannibal never wanted a child and resents her for the near death of his wife, which could not have been good for the psyche of anyone around. Morticia loved Lucy, though everyone else in the girl's life would go on to view her as the spawn of Satan. Her elderly mother would often read her stories written by Mary Shelley, Edgar Allan Poe, and the history of the Borgias, who were Renaissance Italy's most infamous family. The Borgias were said to have committed adultery, incest, theft, bribery, and murder. Their murders were most often committed by arsenic poisoning. This may have been what led to many of the bizarre behaviors that Lucy would go on to express. Lucy was mostly isolated by her parents due to her often cruel behavior. Her only friends were whatever small creatures she could capture. She would play with them until they were dead, after which she would skin them and nail them to the undersides of furniture. She put some of them in her father's favorite stew while it was being cooked, leading to Hannibal's favorite cook quitting and declaring Lucy the spawn of Satan. This was no ordinary cook, as she had previously worked at a prison and was no stranger to dealing with the worst of the worst. She was their longest-serving cook, having worked there a mere 5 months. After that, Lucy's behavior would lead to many of their servants quitting. Morticia would complain of ghostly chills afflicting her as she walked the halls of the house, believing that there were evil spirits lurking just out of sight. She would acquire advice from a psychic named Madame Scarlata, who would instruct her that fireplaces would ward off evil spirits from the house, which she convinced her husband to construct. This led to Lucy becoming fascinated with fire, which she exhibited by throwing small creatures into the many fireplaces so that she could watch them burn. As Lucy's behavior became more and more strange, Morticia would become more and more convinced that their daughter was possessed. Morticia would continue to acquire the help of Madame Scarlata, who believed that the evil spirits could be driven out from Lucy by confusing them, which led to Morticia convincing Hannibal to set up a series of rooms that were designed to throw off the evil spirits. Madame Scarlata would frequent the mansion to conduct seances as yet another attempt to drive out the spirits and save Lucy, though Lucy would sit in the room above as they conducted them and knock on the ceiling. Despite the seances, Hannibal would often beat Lucy, as he believed that it would be the most effective way to cast the evil spirits out of her. Morticia ordered a stairway to be built that led to nowhere, ending at a wall in an attempt to confuse the evil spirits she thought to be possessing her daughter. She would also have a room built where all the furniture hung upside down from the ceiling, as if the room had been flipped. One morning, Hannibal would enter the upside-down room and find a doll that was designed to look like him hanging from a noose tied to the furniture. Throughout the mansion, you will find many doors that open to dead ends. These were built as yet another attempt to confuse the evil spirits, with deadly booby traps placed just outside of them, possibly to give the impression that they lead to real rooms. Those traps seem to have been put there post-war by an AWOL gunner by the name of Zachariah, whose handiwork can be found through a series of locked doors, which leads to a pile of the fresh bodies of traitors stacked in a nearly empty room. As rumor began to spread of the strange construction projects happening at the Grantchester mansion, Hannibal and Morticia would become shunned by the former elites of high society that they had previously considered their friends. As time passed, Lucy would make her first attempt at killing her parents by putting poison in their dessert. This incident would cause lasting health effects to Hannibal, rendering him unable to walk without the assistance of a cane. When Lucy would get too close to him, he would smack her with his cane and beat her until he tired. Things would only get worse when one morning, Hannibal was impaled by a rusty spike that had been placed in his shoe. Hannibal would go up Lucy's room in order to beat her once again, as he believed her to be responsible. No one will ever truly know what unfolded there, but if Lucy is to be believed, she held the scissors in self-defense as Hannibal came to beat her with his cane. With his foot wounded, he would trip and land on the scissors, which passed through his eye into his brain. Though authorities would question why his fingers had also been cut off, she would tell them that it was so he could never beat her with the cane again. That same morning, Morticia would also be found murdered in her bedroom. The exact cause of her death is unknown, though she had rope burns along her arms and a doll stuffed in her mouth. Though rope would never be found, Lucy would claim that it was the doll, who lashed out after it had been denied a goodnight kiss. After her parents had been murdered, police would search Lucy's room to find knives, makeshift weapons, animal bones, toxic substances, and a journal that had been written in a code that they could not decipher. This would lead to her being committed to an asylum where she would escape on her 18th birthday. It was 9 days after that when she was found hung in the attic, with police ruling it a suicide. Curious enough, if you look up at the windows as you first arrive at the mansion, you can see a little girl staring at you from inside the mansion's attic. Zachariah seems to know nothing of this girl, but he does write in a terminal that he has heard a girl's laughter, though he attributes it to a malfunctioning robot. The attic can be entered through the room where Zachariah is, though he will have to be killed to obtain its key. Surely, killing Zachariah will spare many from meeting the same fate as those that he has stacked in the kitchen's basement. Entering the attic, you'll see a little girl who will run into a nearby doorway while laughing. Following her leads to a dead end, another fake door. Could this be Lucy's ghost, tied to her childhood home where she had suffered so much abuse at the hands of her father? With good reason too, as it seems that the Grantchesters may have been played for fools. Years after Lucy's death, the house would be put up for auction. Curators would investigate the room where the seances had been conducted to find a variety of hidden speakers, tripwires, fog machines, and other devices that Madame Scarlata had used to stage false seances. This led many to believe that Madame Scarlata had been taking advantage of Morticia's belief that there were spirits in the house to suck as much money as possible from the Grantchester fortune. This was further supported by trick candles having been amongst the many trinkets found throughout the house. So what do you think happened here? And do ghosts exist in Fallout? This next mystery dives deep into the depths of the darkest locations in Fallout, leading us to fear the forces beyond our understanding. 2. Terrors of the Deep. In Fallout 4, you can find a location known as Hugo's Hole. You'll know you found it because you will hear a gunshot as you approach. There, you can find the remains of a raider that had offed themselves after being transfixed by some kind of entity. A holotape can be found nearby him. He talks about wanting to go inside a quarry, as it had been too long, but he was cast from the rest of his group that resides there for acting far too strange. In the holotape, he further states that he could just kill them all, but the entity would not want that. Nearby, you can find a pre-war marble quarry that, if you choose to explore it, will reveal more than you could have ever expected. The mystery here is a dark one, with ancient ties, some of which can be found in previous releases as well as Fallout 76. To get inside, you'll be pitted against a large group of raiders that will test your skills, but once inside, it does not take long to start to unravel that all is not right here. The raiders appear to have been cooking the unfortunate wastelanders that they captured, above a large pyre at the center of the pit outside of the quarry. Whether this is related to whatever may have been communicating with Hugo is never revealed. But what is revealed is that the raiders had originally come to scrap all the pre-war metal that had been preserved into the mine to send back to the ironworks, their headquarters. It became evident that there was far less metal down in this quarry than they had initially expected, as a terminal entry states that a request for additional support beams than the limited number that were previously used had been denied, which would have led to accidents amongst the miners. Terminal entries would also mention that there have been reports of rumblings and instability all over the quarry. This is strange, considering that the mine is still pretty much pristine 200 years later. Later entries will talk about increasing incidents involving safety standards being cut. These include the lack of railing on drop-offs, lack of support beams, and a backlog of safety inspections. To combat complaint reports, management requests there to be no more complaint reports issued as they're probably already in the backlog. It becomes more and more clear that the management of the quarry does not care about employee safety, almost to a shocking degree, as management would hold a weekly happy hour where miners were allowed to drink on the job. Despite management stating the lack of employee safety measures were due to budget cuts, they would upgrade the boring equipment regularly, though it would not increase the yield by much. This seems suspicious, as if they're trying to cause as many casualties as possible. The whole quarry will start to rumble, and the sole survivor will be granted visions from a dark source depicting the workers there before the war. As you go further down into the mine, you'll find reports that all the workers were being called down to station number 4 to gather for some odd reason. This would also be where raiders were sent to deal with a feral ghoul problem, though the raiders would never return after being sent. Raider leadership down in the quarry would eventually plummet altogether, with one going insane and writing "I'm safe in the light" over and over again in a terminal entry. Inside section 4, we begin to encounter ghouls and find the skeletal remains of miners all over. As to what happened here, we will find out soon enough. Continuing further, you will find station number 5 that doesn't seem to have been mentioned in any other terminal, but a holotape can be found inside. This holotape, titled Tim Shoots, mentions that the crew at Station 4 4 still do not suspect their true intentions and believe them to be transporting equipment to a new section of the mine, but the author of the holotape, Tim Schutz, believes that they need to complete their plan quick, as the more serious supervisors might begin to question things. The visions will continue until you enter the last room of the quarry, where you'll be granted a vision of a pre-war sacrificial ritual involving a strange ritual blade. Evidenced by a holotape found on the ghoulified remains of Tim Schutz, management requested that all the supervisors meet in Section 4, where they were to discuss safety concerns. There, they were seemingly ambushed, tied down, and sacrificed to whatever entity is haunting the quarry. Strangely enough, this whole ritual site appears as though this chamber had always been there, long before it was uncovered by management of the mine. From there, you will find a hole in the ground filled with water, almost like a well. Going down this underwater shaft, you will come face to face with a colossal statue in a much wider chamber that resembles a Roman amphitheater, with pillars and stairs surrounding an altar at the center. It's on this altar that you will find an ancient blade of unknown origin known as Krimvish's tooth. This is not the same blade as the one used in the ritual, unless it has undergone significant changes after the sacrifices, as it looks completely different. Could this blade have been what the mysterious management of Dunwich borers were after the entire time? Shockingly enough, this mystery goes so much deeper, as we are introduced to a mysterious pre-war cult existing in the Point Lookout National Park in Fallout 3. This swampy marshland had never been hit by the atomic bombs, as the nuclear submarine that may have been tasked with that can be found beached, with its crew dead. Most of the locals are inbred abominations, mostly incapable of speech, and have been this way since long before the bombs were dropped. They are all part of a cult, which worships an entity called Ugg Qualtoth, though there is another member of this cult that brings to light more of the dark beings behind it. The only regular human that seems to revere Ugg Qualtoth is Obadiah Blackhall, who tasks the player with finding a family heirloom, a book known as the Krivbekni, and guides you to where the locals conduct ritualistic sacrifice. During this quest, you will meet a Christian missionary by the name of Marcella, who claims that Obadiah plans to use the Krivbekni to control the swamp folk. After meeting both Marcella and Obadiah, it becomes clear that Obadiah despises the other locals of Point Lookout, though it's unclear why. Perhaps it's due to how degraded their genetics are from the rampant incest, or because of the suspected theft of the Krivbekni. We can only speculate. However, he seems to covet the power that this book holds, as he may see it as a way to extend his life. Obadiah is very old, and the only chair he will sit in is a wheelchair, which has an oxygen tank next to it. Arriving at the ritual site, it becomes evident that the swamp folk had indeed stolen the Krivbekni, which lies in the middle of the shrine. The whole shrine is littered with gore, revealing the dark nature of the rituals that the Krivbekni hold the secrets of. Returning to Marcella, you'll find her dead, having been murdered by a group of smugglers hired by Obadiah to put an end to her interfering in his plans. She, however, left a holotape with instructions on how to destroy the Krivbekni, which seems to be the right thing to do, as these secrets in the wrong hands could devastate the wasteland. To destroy the Krivbekni, you will have to travel back to the capital wasteland, to the Dunwich building, where you'll have to make your way to the virulent underchambers located in its basement. By now, I'm sure you're making the connection between Dunwich borers and the Dunwich building, as both were owned by the same company. It's also revealed that Obadiah is the great-great-great-grandnephew of Richard Dunwich. In the innermost chamber of the Dunwich building, you'll experience a lot more strange happenings that you had overcome in Fallout 4. There'll be one feral ghoul who stands by a note that reads, "Sharp knife to send him to Deep Temple. Flay and say my words. Abdul comes again, on the Feast of the Weaker. Feast for the Deep Temple. Born again. Here. Al-Hazred Giyeth Giyeth." Near the note, you'll find the black obelisk. If you activate it, the book and all nearby feral ghouls will be incinerated in a burst of flame from unknown origins. The questline is over, and answers are never fully given, as they had planted the seeds for Dunwich borers in Fallout 4. So could there be ancient gods brewing in the deep places of the Fallout series? Or could all this be due to gaseous fumes causing hallucinations for all those involved? This next one is hard to fathom, as so much of it does not make any sense and could just as well be hallucinations. We'll leave that up to you to decide. 3. Listening Post Bravo. Listening Post Bravo can be found nearby Dunwich borers, and is one of the many military outposts found throughout the map. While it can be easy to overlook, you'll eventually have to go here during a questline involving Paladin Dance. There are no clear paths that lead to this listening post, and it's surrounded by hills and a dense forest. Inside, you'll find what looks to be just an average military station, though there is the skeleton of a soldier still seated at the desk he died at. As a security precaution, the elevator has been powered down and is completely inoperable. You'll have to bypass this by hacking into the terminal mounted on the wall next to it. With the elevator now powered, you can journey to the bunker below. Deep underground, you'll find 2 destroyed protectrons and an offline sentry turret. It will mostly be what you expected. A military listening post, full of equipment used for just that, but strangely enough, there is a Yaoguai that should not be down there. Its home is a cave exposed by collapsed sections of the bunker. It has no way out and no way in, so it shouldn't be alive down there. But it is, which makes no sense and is very confusing. In its cave are 5 skeletons that are mostly soldiers who appear to have been stationed in the bunker when the bombs dropped. If this is true, then that means that the Yaoguai may have been down there for 200 years. But it couldn't have been, as a series of entries found on a terminal in this bunker sheds some light on what happened here, though it does not paint a clear picture. On Monitoring Terminal 03, operated by a Sergeant J.P. Renksy, we find a series of reports. LP Bravo Monitoring Report 10 seems to reveal that the skeleton at the desk on the surface level could be that of Captain Rutledge, who ordered Sergeant Renksy to take over the long-range monitoring duties for 4 weeks. During that time, he'd be completely isolated from the outside world. So we are left to assume that only one of the soldiers whose skeletons are found here were supposed to be there. So why are there plenty more? This isn't even where it gets weird, as the next entry, LP Bravo Monitoring Report 14, reveals that while Renksy was monitoring the low-band frequencies, which was mainly used to detect the frequencies used by outdated equipment, he detected a very cryptic message that repeated itself for an entire hour. The site was used to monitor Chinese spy networks, so he was surprised that it was in English, though the signal was full of static and hard to make out. The phrases Renksy could make out were "internal void," "dreams are getting darker," "blood runs so still," and DEK, the last of which he assumed to be a call sign. He would report the signal to Washington in hopes that they could decrypt what it could mean. He waited for days, hearing nothing back from Washington. Eventually, he would be woken up by a series of loud banging noises on the elevator door. Security measures prevented the elevator from being used during the 4-week period of each monitoring duty, so he activated the bunker's defense systems and took out his emergency rifle, preparing for an enemy attack. The banging at the elevator continued for almost an hour, when suddenly it stopped. Renksy soon began to feel as though this was somehow related to the mysterious broadcast frequency that he had intercepted. According to the entry titled LP Bravo Monitoring Report 25, it wasn't until another 5 days had passed that Washington finally responded to his message, stating that the holotape they had been sent by him was blank, something he would confirm himself when he checked on a second recording that he had of it. He would mention the banging he had heard, and they would suspect him to be experiencing auditory hallucinations from being isolated for so long, which he believed was possible as isolation could play tricks on the mind. They said they would send someone to relieve him of his duty so that he could recover. The final words of this entry would be, "Maybe I wanted to find a mystery to solve to occupy the time so badly. My imagination decided to take over. Whatever it was, I hope this doesn't go down on my permanent record." And then nothing else is revealed from there. We just find a Yaoguai that shouldn't be there with another group of soldiers rendered skeletons in a cave that shouldn't be there. The soldiers must have been sent there to relieve him, with more being sent this time to avoid the auditory symptoms of isolation experienced by Renksy. But where did the Yaoguai come from? Could the Yaoguai have been someone trapped down there by a survivor who cleverly thought of a way to imprison it so that he would not have to fight it himself? And what happened here could have been Renksy going insane from the isolation, attacking the soldiers that arrived to relieve him. With all the questions left by that one, this last mystery is more straightforward, but also leaves us with so much to question. For instance, what connection could this have to the Zetans and the ruins at Dunwich Borers? 4. The Ancient Crown. While parts of this next mystery could also be viewed as hallucinations, there is too much proving that aspects of it are so much more than that, leaving so many questions with few answers. To understand this mystery, we will first have to start where it began. In 1894, Lorenzo Cabot, scientist and archaeologist, went on an expedition to the Rub al-Khali Desert in the Middle East, searching for proof that there could be a precursor civilization called Ubar hiding below the sands. In the real world, Ubar is known as the Atlantis of the sands, and though many have claimed to have discovered it, none of their discoveries can be confirmed to be the mysterious city. Though many believed his theory that this civilization could exist to be insane, including his own son Jack Cabot, he would find vindication when he and his team unearthed a vast subterranean city that held within it the artifacts and remains that could not be of human origin. The pair, along with a team of locals hired as diggers for the expedition, would discover parts of the city. Though a sandstorm would brew and once more bury most of what they had discovered, they would eventually discover a sealed tomb of ancient design. They would remove its seal, which resealed, discovering a sarcophagus that held within it an otherworldly humanoid creature that wore upon its head a great crown. The local diggers were so terrified that they fled from the site, refusing to ever enter it again. Lorenzo would remove the crown from its head carefully, ordering the tomb to be sealed and putting an end to the expedition. That night, Lorenzo studied the crown and felt increasingly compelled by some unknown force to don the crown upon his head. The longer he wore the crown, the more he came to understand it and the civilization it had been from. He would realize that this could not be the city of Ubar he had been seeking, as no human could have designed what they discovered, and the ruins were far older than even the earliest of human artifacts. This crown, though ancient and alien, could somehow influence the mind of a human despite being far older than humanity. He would share his discovery with only his wife Wilhelmina, his son Jack, and his daughter Imogen. When he returned to his wife and children in Boston, he would be a changed man and intended to teach his family of his discoveries so that they could return to it together. The crown had made his physical state overall superior to what it had been, increasing his strength and ending any further signs of aging. It would also grant him powerful psychic abilities, but at the cost of his sanity. It's very strange that an alien artifact would be able to do this, as our DNA would be vastly different. For example, medicine intended to cure a specific ailment for a human would not necessarily work on a fish, a turtle, or even a bird. Over time, his family would become very influential in American society, though he would become increasingly paranoid, even violent, and begin to commit crimes that would have landed anyone else on death row. He could no longer remove the crown, as attempting to do so would cause him great pain, with the crown seemingly having bonded to his head. 4 years after his return, his personality would change so much that Jack Cabot would have him confined in the basement of Parsons State Insane Asylum to keep him from harming those around him. He accepted this, as it was the only way he could hope to convince his family that he was, indeed, sane and get them to return to the Rub al-Khali Desert with him to continue uncovering what waited for them below its sands. Jack would study Lorenzo's blood and the crown in hopes that he could uncover a way to cure his father of its influence. Along the way, he would discover that he could use his father's blood to create a serum that granted his family the ability to temporarily gain the same healing effects that rendered his father ageless. Centuries would pass. Jack would continue to study his father's crown and use the serum to extend the life of his family, adding further safety precautions over time and paying off the asylum's staff to keep it all a secret. Why no one questioned this is beyond me, as most people would have raised an eyebrow at this. Lorenzo would remain in confinement for 400 years, while his son Jack continued to study the crown with his sister Imogen, who would begin to suspect that Jack was no longer trying to cure his father and was instead working to extend their lives permanently. After Jack had installed dampeners that prevented Lorenzo from using his psychic abilities, Lorenzo would begin to hate his family for what he saw as a betrayal and desired revenge. Trapped beneath Parsons, he would commune with the crown and gain more of its knowledge. Jack would employ the sole survivor to retrieve a shipment of the serum from a group of raiders that had intercepted his mercenaries as they were delivering it. Doing so would earn him their trust, and the Cabots would soon find themselves in further need of his service. Wilhelmina fears that Imogen might be in danger and sends the sole survivor to find her, where he would discover that she had joined a cult and convinced its leaders to let her return home. After freeing Imogen, she will reveal the dark truth behind the serum and leave ahead of the sole survivor, who will return to the Cabot house to claim their reward. But Jack is busy, as Lorenzo's psychic abilities have begun to overpower his prison, and he has compelled a group of raiders to invade Parsons State Insane Asylum, with Edward updating Jack of the situation. Jack and the sole survivor make their way to Parsons State Insane Asylum to fully access the situation and prevent Lorenzo from escaping. They arrive to find it completely overrun by raiders. Locating Edward wounded inside, they continue to fight through the raiders until they reach the basement where Lorenzo is being held, to find that the raiders have almost succeeded in freeing him from his prison. The sole survivor will talk to Lorenzo, who will reveal his story and some of the secrets of the crown, though it's clear that Lorenzo has gone mad over his long isolation. Jack will instruct the sole survivor to set the Abremelin generators to overdrive by flipped a switch, which would kill his father by flooding his cell with Lorenzo's cell with lethal zeta radiation. Upon flipping the switches and killing Lorenzo, Jack tells the sole survivor that had he listened to his father and freed him, he would have killed his family. continuing on to say that nothing would have stopped his father from returning to his criminal activity. Though he is sad that he has lost the ability to produce his immortality serum, Jack seems to have genuinely believed that with just a little more research, he could have cured his father and removed the crown from his head. Were these artifacts Zeton, or something far more ancient? These mysteries are amongst the many aspects of the Fallout series that inspire us to keep exploring, discovering new things around every corner, in every playthrough. If you want to see Fallout 4's most disturbing mysteries explained, click the video on the screen.